I could hear the screaming from downstairs. The more drunk my mother was, the worse I knew it was going to get. I would try and hide upstairs, but I could still hear her screams. One day, I had enough. I couldn't stand to listen to another one of her screams, so I left. I ran away.
I didn't even know anything was wrong at home. She was my best friend and I didn't even know.
Welcome to Trafficked, Modern Day Slavery. I'm your host, Morgan Tima. Through the foster care system, human trafficking, and beyond, tonight we explore the heartbreaking story of Barbara Amaya and her journey from struggle to success.
I love to read, collect stamps, draw. I was even a part of the Barbie fan club.
We used to always play with Barbies together, and I remember she collected stamps, but
after I was abused, I became a different little girl. When I was 10, my father used to beat me every night. Eventually, the beatings got so bad that I became depressed.
But I didn't know what was wrong. I was only 10. I wish I could have seen the signs. I wish I could have done something.
No one was there for her during her abuse, so she retreated. She didn't want to be around people, so she stopped going to school and ran away multiple times to nearby Washington, D.C. She was 12, 6th grade, trying to feel accepted, trying to seek comfort elsewhere. To support herself, she initially relied on shoplifting and handouts.
Suddenly, she wasn't there anymore. I never knew what happened. One day we were friends and the next, she was gone. She came back, thankfully, but it didn't stop. She ran away several times that summer. And I feel horrible saying this now, but I thought she was trying to get attention. It didn't seem like a big deal. She'd run away to DC for a few days, but she always came back.
I think that every child needs the same thing. They need love, a family, a roof over their heads, food. I was searching for some things, and I was running away from some things as well.
But the last time, she didn't. In D.C., she was approached by a woman who seemed helpful and caring. But what that woman did was introduce her to prostitution and trafficking.
The summer I ran away from home, I was 12. I fell into the hands of a woman. I was sitting at a park and she just started talking to me. I was hungry and cold and young, and she took me to her apartment. Before I knew it, she put a wig on me, took me out to the corner of 14th, and they sold me to a trafficker. I remember that day clearly, like it was yesterday.
By the time she was almost 13, she had been groomed for prostitution by the woman and a trafficker affiliated with her. She was put on the streets of Washington, D.C., and put to work for the trafficker's clients.
I remember another day, they took me to the same street corner. I saw money exchanging hands, and before I knew it, they'd sold me to a different trafficker, and I was in his van on my way to New York.
We've got an exclusive interview with Barbara's trafficker from his prison in New York. To protect her, we have decided to keep his identity secret. We will discover what happened that night from his point of view.
It was just another deal that night. I took her up to New York. Yeah, I said that I cared and that I would protect her, but it was just to control her. Her body was my property and my source of income, simple as that. I used her to get what I needed, and I pretended to give her what she needed. Protecting home. She wasn't any different than any of my other girls.
She wasn't any different than my other girls. Traffickers can use emotional manipulation as another way to keep their victims hostage. This can lead to a victim forming a dependence with their captor.
A question I get a lot is, why didn't you just leave? Why don't they just leave? Why did you stay? Well, it's not that simple. He was all I had. My family didn't care about me. He said he did, so I stayed.
We've seen cases like this before. Sympathy towards captors is very common in those that have been trafficked and captured. Doctors have come up with Stockholm Syndrome as an attempt to explain the sympathy victims of trafficking feel towards their captors, the development of a bond of love and empathy.
When being trafficked, you spend a great deal of time with that person. I was looking for normal within a framework where nothing was normal. This isn't a syndrome. It's a survival strategy.
The survival instinct is at the heart of the Stockholm Syndrome. Victims live in enforced dependence and interpret rare or small acts of kindness in the midst of horrible conditions as good treatment.
The most surprising part was how much more aware I became of my captor's needs and demands. I began to make links between my captor's happiness and my own. Not only did I have this bond with my captor, but also I had a negative attitude towards anyone who tried to threaten our relationship. He was the only love I knew.
But that is not the end of the story. When we come back, Barbara is able to get away and tries to lead a normal life. Welcome back to Trafficked, Modern Day Slavery. Barbara Maya will defy her personal struggles to share her story with millions, but only after she learned to define what happened to her. Barbara, one day you were able to break away, and at the time you were 5'9", 99 pounds, and addicted to drugs.
That's right. I turned to heroin to dull the pain on the streets. I went to a drug clinic for my addictions and they helped me a lot. I started trying to live a normal life afterwards, but it was impossible. I had a 6th grade education, depression, a criminal record, and no one knew my story.
What led you here? What changed?
Well, I had this grand moment in 2012. Watching the news one day, I heard a story about human trafficking. That was the first time in my life I'd ever heard that term used. In that moment, I just got so angry knowing it was still happening. I knew I had to make a difference. 2 weeks later, I ended up sharing my story on that same news channel. After that, I started doing whatever I could to spread the word. That's all.
Barbara has been trying her best to make a difference and stop trafficking. But how many people are affected by this? How big of a problem is this?
Unfortunately, the number of cases of human trafficking is rising. In 2017 alone, there were nearly 2,700 calls made to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and 8,500 of those were reported cases. Sadly, in 2017, there were roughly 1,000 more reported cases than the year before. The International Labor Organization estimates that there are 40 million victims worldwide.
Barbara has gone above and beyond to prevent stories like her own and to help those who have already been through trafficking.
Ms. Amaya has helped pass the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, a federal bill that allows survivors to expunge criminal records they accumulated while kidnapped. She was then able to go back to the same courtroom and clear her criminal record, a very powerful moment for her. Along with the bill, Barbara has helped law enforcement develop training for situations similar to hers. Barbara facilitates numerous survivor therapy groups while also working with nonprofit organizations to help combat human trafficking.
Unfortunately, Barbara Amaya's story is not unique, but her outcome is. She took the hardships that she had to overcome and used her past to help prevent more stories like her own. Barbara has a message for those affected by trafficking.
That person that is controlling you does not care about you. That person that's controlling you thinks you're a commodity. And I know you don't want to believe me or hear me, but I wish you would, because all you are to that person is a $sign. I know that it's hard to hear because you think this person has your best interests at heart. Whatever story this person is telling you, it's not true. You are worth so much more. You are priceless. I know you could live a wonderful, beautiful life. I know that you can.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing your story with us today. If you or anyone you know is in trouble, please don't hesitate to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-3737-888. You can also text HELP to 233-733 to be connected to the hotline, or you can visit their website, humantraffickinghotline.org, for further information. Barbara says that trafficking has always been about supply and demand, that until we change what we are teaching our young men to view about women, nothing will change. Here's hoping some of that change starts today. For all of us here at Trafficked, I'm Morgan Tima. Good night.